making presentations is so important, because if you have a great idea and nobody knows about it, or an action that we should take, we need to understand that ability to be able to take action on it. And so that presenting the ideas effectively is critical to being able to do that. So a couple of things are important about that. First is get to what is the PowerPoint of the slide. I mean, there's a reason why the software package is named that way, but it's the PowerPoint. Make the points in the slide. Make the points that you want to make, the issues that you want to have everybody understand. Don't get caught up in the things that are happening, all the presentation mechanics and colors and all the things that are esoteric. It's get to the content and understand what the important thing is. The second thing is never lose sight of the action items. Ultimately, you have to ask for something, for a change to be made or for something to be put in place. And never forget that you're there with a mission to accomplish something from your presentation. And that's, I think, critically important, because otherwise you can wander. The last thing is have an understanding for what the audience, what's going through the audience's mind as well. A bit of feedback that I was given at one point in time is never have a greater desire to speak than your audience has to listen. And so you kind of keep that in mind to be able to say that, look, people have got time constraints, they've got issues, people want to listen to you, but you have to put it in a format that people can understand and take action upon. Don't make it difficult for them.
Good presentations start with preparation. You need to know your facts, make sure that you're focused, understand the 2 or 3 things that you want to get across, accomplish in that session. You need to make sure that you set the context. You need to take a complicated subject and make it simple, and you need to manage expectations. I think you need to predict what the audience, first understand what the audience knows, predict in your own mind what would be on their mind, and answer it before they get a chance to ask it.
When someone's presenting to me, I do like to see the recommendation up front, so that I have a sense of where the person, where the organization, where the presenter is going with the presentation. This gives me a chance to react, have a discussion with them about where we're going. Many times in presentations, there's such a long setup that you wonder where the person's going, and as a manager, you might try to get them there sooner. So I really like someone to give me your recommendation up front. What do you want to accomplish in the presentation? Where are you going? And then we can have a good discussion of about the pros and cons of the situation, or have a good discussion about what they are presenting.
I think some of the keys to really doing a very good business presentation for senior management is to spend the time up front to think about what it is you want the management group to do after your presentation. I think that's something that people miss. Should be an obvious one, but it's often missed. What action do you want us to take? What question do you want answered? And then think through what are the pieces of information that you might need if you were sitting in our shoes to come to that conclusion or to take the action that you desire. I think I would also give people advice to remember that the people who are hearing the presentation may not be as familiar with your business as you are, so to try to simplify the issues, try to explain the acronyms, try to keep the language and the jargon to a minimum is helpful. And then thereafter, I think, again, good presentation preparation would require that you try to think about what questions you're likely to get. And if you can't do it yourself, perhaps you can engage the help from somebody who is less familiar with the issue, a little bit not as close to an issue, to help you anticipate what the questions are and to prepare for them.
I think you have to start out telling people what you want from them. And at the most senior level, you got to get to the point. And be very, very candid, very straightforward with what specific action items you're looking for. The reason why I'm presenting to you is because I need your agreement on, or I need you to be aware. That basically gives the listeners again, especially at the senior level, the clue as to what they need to listen for in the balance of your presentation. So you tell them up front, and then you give them all the information that you need to be able to make sure that they understand all points of view. And then you come back then at the end of that presentation with a reiteration of those action items. And then you get agreement from them at the end.
Succinct, direct, here's the data, here's my analysis of the data, and here's my recommendation. I like people in presentations who very, very directly give you the pros and the cons. So many times you get into a discussion, particularly in business reviews, where my management is trying to give me exposure to people lower down in the organization, and invariably that there will be a presentation of this stream of positive things that have been done, and then you look at the outcome of the results, and it's either mediocre or not so good. In that circumstance, I'd rather have someone very directly say, here's why it's not working, here's what's wrong, here's what we did wrong, now here's what I think if we change, we can turn this thing around. I have a lot more respect for that kind of approach and those kinds of presentations and those kinds of leaders than I do for someone who is, the sunshine's always out and it's always great.
When people are presenting to you, I think when someone has a presentation style that they're they're holding back their recommendation. They're not giving you the punchline till the end, and they get into a long build-up. And they really don't try to engage you as to, do you want to hear this, or is this more important? Having the presenter give me some options as we go through the presentation is something that I like, and not having those options, can irritate me because you can get bored, or you wonder what's going on, or you're spending more time thinking about where's this person going, where's this presentation going, than you are. Let's talk about the presentation. What's in the presentation? What are the parts that we want to be discussing in the presentation?
If you're asked to distinguish between presentations to different levels of management, then I think the only real difference to me is that the executive management, you'll likely have a shorter period of time. You need to presume that they have done the homework, read the information you've given them ahead of time, and you want to quickly get to the point. I think with a more junior audience, whether you are sharing information or you're imparting some sort of knowledge, then you want to take a little more time to set the tone, make sure that you have a common understanding across the audience, which may not be the case, and then lead them a little bit more deliberately to the end point you want.
The balance between the broad statements and details in a presentation is very artful, because there's a certain point where you know that you can go too far. And the gauge that I use is what is the minimal level of information that I can get forward to be able to advance the point forward that I want to make, and without going into excess detail that goes off agenda. So I want to stay focused on what I'm trying to accomplish with the presentation and give that information sometimes into the granular level of detail that's necessary to make that point, but not the level of detail that creates a diversion.
Getting that balance right in any presentation between trying to really pin the detail down and being prepared to answer those questions, and how much of that detail you really put in the presentation, that is a challenging piece. Now, one way to approach this might be, again, to try to get someone, some friend or someone from another function to listen to your presentation to see their reaction to it. Again, someone who's not quite as close to the issue as you are. And overall, I think I would err on the side of people, for my advice, to keep it simple, to have the detail in hand if you need it, to answer the questions, but to err on the side of keeping things simple and summarized rather than loading things up with a great deal of background information and detail.
I think when one begins to prepare for a presentation, particularly in an audience of senior executives, and my sort of rule of thumb is if you've got 30 minutes that you've been asked to speak on a topic, I would think you'd want to prepare no more than 15 minutes. And if you're doing the job of stimulating their interest in the information you're sharing or the decision you're trying to make happen, the amount of questions, the dialogue with that audience will take up the other half.
Presenting to different groups, whether it be the corporate strategy board, the board of directors, or someone, shouldn't be a lot different. Slides may get a little more formal and a little more careful in presentation. But I think you really need to understand your audience, understand what they know about the subject, and then understand what you want from them and tell them that up front. So you need to adjust if you're asking for a recommendation, to a group. Let them know that and then present them. Understand what they know. If you need to give them some background because they're not familiar, but if you've got a group that is very familiar with the subject that you're talking about, then you can cut some of that out. So I think you need to have an understanding of who you're presenting to, what their background, and then let them know what you're asking them for in your presentation, or if it's just for information, that's fine too. Then let them know that you're just here to present information for their knowledge going forward.
A good rule of thumb is about half in presentation, about half for questions. Again, it's going to vary a bit depending on the audience, but that seems, at least with senior management presentations at CSB, I think that's a good rule of thumb.
To me, content of a presentation is much more important than style. Some people are better presenters than others. That's going to be natural. Improving your presentation style is always important, but the content is the most important thing. And having in a presentation situation, having the opportunity to discuss and get into dialogue is very important. If you can do that, that's much more important than how slides look and how practiced the presenters are. Sometimes you can be too practiced in a presentation as well, to where it stifles the discussion and to where you really don't want to interrupt the person. And that's dialogue. Presentation should be as much as a dialogue as a meeting is.
I'd like to say that style doesn't matter, but it does matter. Being able to be crisp and concise in your presentation is very important. But overall, it's the content rather than the flashy graphics or the pretty slides that I think are most important.
Style is important in presentation because I think that you have to keep in mind that you have to be convincing. That is what I think is probably the most important stylistic detail, is be convincing. And that, I think if you show your personal energy, if you show that you've thought about it and that you think that what you're presenting is the right thing to do, that will translate. Too often we get caught up in the stylistics of should it be conversational or should it be some other type of presentation style. I think that if you're presenting something that you truly believe in, let your natural energy, your natural passion flow from that. And that sense of energy and excitement translates into energy and excitement in your audience, and they pick up your desire to do what you want them, and or the action item that you need from them.